Well, hello, welcome. My name is Anthony Lovenos, and I serve on the Hispanic Leaders Network Advisory Board. As we begin, please make sure that you are on mute during for the duration of the main presentation, and we invite you to ask questions through the Zoom chat and Facebook comment features. There will be an opportunity for a short networking time at the end of this luncheon meeting if you'd like to stay with us. The Hispanic Leaders Network, also referred to as HLN, is a group of Hispanic leaders who are passionate and deeply vested in supporting current and future leaders. Our vision is to develop and empower current and future leaders to make a difference in the community. And our mission is to provide personal, cultural, and professional opportunities to inspire Hispanic leaders to serve and make a positive impact. The HLN operates as a committee of the Syntax Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And today's presentation is about a very important topic that continues to impact the Hispanic, Black, and other non-white race communities, racial inequity. We have invited Nicole Wynter from Waco Foundation and Felicia Goodman from Cooper Foundation to share how we know racial inequality still exists in Waco and the initiatives both foundations have collaboratively worked on to address this very important issue. Joe Martinez, director of the Waco Regional Airport, will be serving as the moderator for the event. Again, participants on Zoom and Facebook Live can type their questions into the Zoom chat or comment section. Before we begin the program, since this program is occurring during the lunch hour, I would like to ask Derek Watley from Mighty Wind Worship Center to give the invocation. Pastor Watley.
I thank you guys so much for the opportunity. When asked, I was very excited because I do believe in everything that you guys are speaking of and everything that we're talking about today. And I do think this is a very important topic for all of us as far as Hispanics, African Americans, as we move forward. As you all know, our nation is in a place of unrest, and especially when it comes to racial injustice in different scenarios like this. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to put our heads together and come up with some great ideas and to actually move forward and have a plan of action and be successful so that we can actually see the change that we're looking for. And so thank you guys for that opportunity. And so I'll just pray, and then you guys can go ahead and start the meeting, okay? Father, this day I thank you. I thank you for everything that you're doing in the city of Waco and McLennan County. I thank you for organizations like the Hispanic Leaders Network that are willing to sacrifice themselves, their time, to actually see you move on the behalf of injustice in every race available to us, in every race that we face. And so, Father, I pray that you would give us the wisdom, you would share wisdom, share insight with us today that would equip us to be more effective, that would equip us to come up with ways to resolve our issues that we're facing as far as racial inequality. And so I thank you for each and every person that's on this call, and I pray that you would bless each and every one of them. And Father, give us the wisdom and the knowledge and the strength to know how we can contribute to resolving this issue this day in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, for praying for us as we begin.
No problem.
I'm Bridget Hines, and I serve as the co-chair for the Hispanic Leaders Network as a board member of your Syntax Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. As mentioned earlier, today's moderator is Joel Martinez, Director of Aviation for the City of Waco, with over 18 years of experience in airport management. Prior to assuming his current position in December 2008, he served at the Del Rio International Airport for 5 years as the Assistant Airport Director. He was then promoted to Airport Director in the spring of 2007. During his tenure at Del Rio International, he obtained and managed over $20 million of state and federal grants for the construction of a new terminal building, runway extension, and taxiway and apron expansions. In 2005, he was instrumental in securing daily continental connection service between Del Rio and Houston's Bush Intercontinental Airport. During his time, the Del Rio International Airport became one out of 2 communities nationwide to successfully implement the Small Communities Air Service Program. In 2008, Del Rio International was named Most Improved Airport of the Year by the Aviation Division of the Texas Department of Transportation. Since arriving in Waco in December of 2008, he has overseen several airport improvement projects totaling nearly $75 million. In November of 2011, the Waco Regional Airport was named Texas Airport of the Year by the Federal Aviation Administration's Southwest Region. In 2015, Joel began teaching airport administration and air transportation management and supporting an internship program at Baylor University's Aviation Sciences Department. Martinez, 42, holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Sul Ross State University and certifications in Part 139 compliance, airport security, and fuel quality control. He has been married to Priscilla for 18 years and is the father of 6 children, Jalen, 21, Gabriella, 17, Andrea, 14, Isabella, 13, Joel II, 11, and Ava Grace, 6. Our special guests today are Nicole Wynter from the Waco Foundation and Felicia Goodman from the Cooper Foundation. After working in the nonprofit sector for more than a decade, Nicole Wynter joined Waco Foundation in late 2010 with the vision of improving quality of life for McLennan County residents. Today, she serves as the Senior Director of Community Investment and Operations. In that capacity, she facilitates the Foundation's proactive and responsive capacity building and grant-making programs, compliance with national standards for community foundations, and lends support to the organization's operational and HR responsibility. Nicole holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, a Master in Public Policy and Administration, and a Master of Professional Studies in Community and Economic Development. Felicia Chase Goodman has spent her career in various roles in the nonprofit sector. She enjoys pulling from that experience to support nonprofits in Waco through her role as Executive Director at the Cooper Foundation, whose mission is to make Waco a better place. Felicia is a native Wacoan and graduate of Waco High School and holds a Bachelor of Science in Organizational Development and a Master of Public Health. She is married to Summers Goodman, and they have 2 amazing daughters.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for our conversation regarding race equity and the efforts that are taking place within our community. We have entitled this session, A Conversation About Race Equity in Waco. We know that this work is varied, and there are many players involved in trying to address inequity in the greater Waco area. For the purpose of this discussion, though, we will be focusing on the work of the Cooper and Waco Foundations. The Waco Foundation is a community foundation for McLennan County, and Cooper Foundation is a public supporting foundation that solely supports the Waco community. These foundations work together in a number of ways to maximize resources to affect community change. While the discussion today will not focus on individual acts of meanness, hatred demonstrated towards others, or give space for personal storytelling, we do recognize that the topic of racism can be uncomfortable for some people, and we would encourage you to take note of that discomfort and sit with it. And that can provide insight into where you as an individual need to focus your development moving forward.
Thank you for having us. We are so excited to be here, and we're excited that the number of people in the community that are interested in this topic continues to grow. Joel, if it's okay with you, before we jump into the Q&A, I'd love to just take a few seconds to set a bit of context for our conversation today. First, I want to say, as Joel did, there are a number of people and organizations in this community that are doing our work around racial equity. And so we like to say at the 2 foundations that we are part of a body of work that's taking place in the community. We in no way, shape, or form say that we are experts on racial equity, nor do we say that we are the lead race equity folks in the community. We are just part of a community that's interested in this topic and doing work. And so that's what we're excited to share with you. A couple other things that I want to say is that, one of the things that we've come to understand is that in order for us to improve quality of life, which is part of our collective mission statements, we've come to understand that we have to address racial inequity because it has played and continues to play a significant role in the way that our community is shaped. It impacts who has access to resources. It impacts who has more wealth building opportunities, and it just impacts who has better outcomes in general. So we say that. We also say very strongly that we believe history and context matter. We've challenged the narrative that we live in an ahistorical and post-racial nation, and that we do not have to consider the fact that many of the norms around organizational culture and success, many of the policies, institutions, and systems that exist today were established during a time when racial segregation, unequal access, and unequal treatment were formally sanctioned by our government, and those things still have repercussions for us today. So we say, yes, history and context matter. We also say that this is not a Republican versus Democrat or a liberal versus conservative issue. For us, this is about how do we improve quality of life for everybody in our community, no less and no more. So I'll stop it there.
Well, thank you. I'll go ahead and start kind of our conversation. Nicole, will you start off by talking a little bit about the conversations amongst your staff and board when you first began thinking about how to address equity in our community?
Sure. So Waco Foundation launched the Smart Babies Initiative in 2009 to address early childhood outcomes. And as part of that work, as time went on, we started to collect the data around early childhood issues. And we consistently saw that Black mothers and infants, and more generally, people of color, had worse outcomes than their white counterparts year in and year out, even when you account for things like income level and education level and access to healthcare and the quality of that healthcare. So we had that information going on, and we were processing that. And then around the same time, the Community Race Relations Coalition was hosting a series of trainings in the community called Undoing Racism. And they were great in that they offered the greater Waco community access to those trainings. So we were able to send a couple of our staff to some of those sessions. And then in 2014, the CRRC approached Waco Foundation and asked us about actually co-hosting one of those Undoing Racism trainings. And we agreed to do that. And so that was actually the first session that I attended where I had exposure to this material. And then after that session, I went back to my boss, our executive director, and I told her that I thought the format and a lot of the content of that training was really helpful because it helps me understand how I needed to better articulate how and why our community looks the way it does, both physically and outcomes wise. And I said to her that I thought it'd be really helpful for a lot more people in our community, especially in the nonprofit and the public sectors, to have access to this information. And so she and I talked back and forth about it, and we kind of settled on this idea that, this could be the most important capacity building or professional development investment we make. And we make a lot of them in the community consistently every year. This could be the most important one we make because we thought, having the ability to talk about race, having the ability to understand how race shows up in our policies, our practices, our institutions, and having the ability to not only understand that and convey that to other people, that is a skill set that most of us as community leaders need. But it's something, unfortunately, that many of us do not have and do not have access to. And those of us who are looking at doing community-wide work or doing systems-level work, it's part of the package for creating change. And so we just felt like it was important to kind of begin to think about how we could enter this space more fully beyond what we had started to do with the CRRC.
Felicia, did your board engage in similar conversations, and how did those start?
Well, a little over 5 years ago, I had attended some facilitated conversations about the film Race, the Power of an Illusion. And our board had really just begun looking at the outcomes data in Waco that was from the Smart Babies initiative from Waco Foundation. And it was very clear the stark disparities in the outcomes. So it was on my mind a lot. And I had informal conversations with individual Cooper board members about race equity without even having a sense of what my goal was. To Nicole's point about having the skills to have the conversation, I did not have them. But I had a feeling that without addressing racial inequities, I wasn't sure how we'd ever really have a huge impact. We make great grants and we do good work, but really without getting at the core of racial inequities in our community, it just felt like we could do so much more. So the conversations about racial equity, again, they were met with some hesitation, not because of a lack of interest, but again, to the point of not having the skill set to have it and not understanding what the known action steps would be. We just sort of were left at, well, let's keep thinking about this and talking about it. But we didn't really move forward yet. And I think that's where a lot of organizations are at this point.
How did you decide to bring in the Race Equity Institute to launch the Equity Initiative?
Okay. So, anytime I think about delivering a message, especially one that is calls for a change in perspective, one that challenges the status quo, I think about my target audience, and then I think about how I need to frame that message to make sure that they have the ability to hear it and that it's not dismissed outright, right? So in this particular situation, I thought about the person in my professional circle that I needed to influence, who would be most uncomfortable with this topic, that would just, normally just shy away from it. And then I thought about how they best receive and process information. And then I just literally went about the business of trying to find a firm that could deliver the material in that way. And so for us, I was looking for an organization that would do work that was linear, that was factual, that was really heavy on data, really light on emotions and any touchy-feely stuff. And then it was just provided information in a way that people could turn around and go back and do their own research after they left if they wanted to get more information or to challenge anything that they heard. And for us, that firm was the Racial Equity Institute, or REI as we like to call it. So that's kind of how we connected with them.
So can you elaborate on the goal of the first training?
Yeah, so our goal really was simple. It was just to help people see that there's a way that we can talk about race and racism that can be really constructive to community problem solving. So it was just that.
Thank you. Felicia, you attended the first training. What was your experience and how did it impact you?
So I attended my first training in December 2016. That was the first time Waco Foundation brought REI to Waco. And we were at that point not involved in bringing them. And I just was very deeply moved. And it was clear to me that Cooper Foundation should be involved in offering the trainings. It was that powerful to me. And through that training, I really realized that the conversation is not about individual racism. And I think that's what we all worry about. And that's what we see. That's visible, and how individuals treat each other. But that's really not what this is about. I think it's also really hard for white people to hear. It feels like it feels very personal, but it's really about the structures, and it's not about individuals. It's not about one-on-one, although that exists, and that's horrible. That's not what this is about. It's really about the structures that have been created in this country that were put in place from the beginning and upheld. And that includes philanthropy. It includes how grant making works. I mean, I have to take a part of that too. And I wanted more people to understand, to experience the training. And as I said, I thought it was important that Cooper be a partner in the work. That putting it all on Waco Foundation was also kind of not fair. So I actually put together an internal proposal and presented it to my board so that we could spend some of our grant funds to partner with Waco Foundation on future trainings. And my board didn't hesitate, despite the fact that not one of them had attended the training. But I provided them with the data, again, reminding them of the Smart Babies data. And, if you look at the outcomes, it's clear there's something going on here with the systems. This is not just the individual acts. And you could see the disparities in every data point that we look at: education, health, financial security. White people just have better outcomes. And the data showing the disparities is really hard to argue with. So since then, 5 of my 7 board members have attended the training, and that has advanced our conversation even further.
Okay. So now, Nicole, what's happened since then?
Okay, so since about late 2016, early 2017, we've hosted about 17, 18 workshops, more than 240 people represented, affiliated with up to some 80-something agencies or organizations in the community, whether it's nonprofit board service or what have you. The workshops that we've tended to focus on are the REI Phase 1 2-day training, which covers the impact of implicit bias, the impact of socialization. It covers the relationship between race and poverty, as well as the relationship between race, wealth, and income. It talks about history of race as a construct, as well as goes through a really comprehensive review of the laws and policies and practices that have been used over decades to give advantages to whites. And then the other training that we've done a lot of is REI's groundwater training, which is a 3-hour training that provides a framework for analysis that looks at disparities and disproportionalities between, again, the outcomes between whites and people of color and BIPOC, with regard to things like what Felicia mentioned: education, healthcare, criminal justice, juvenile justice, conservatorship and CPS, economic development, just the full gamut. Consistently, what we see are whites are having the worst, best outcomes, and Blacks tend to have the worst, and Hispanics and Latinos and other people tend to be somewhere in the middle. Obviously, there are some exceptions to the rule, but that's typically what's happening. And so, and then we've also done a couple of unconscious bias trainings. I'd say, obviously, the pandemic has put a damper on our ability to deliver in-person trainings right now. So we have kind of regrouping, and we are launching now a series of virtual trainings, virtual groundwater trainings. We hosted our first one earlier this week. We'll host another one on November 20th, and I'll put the link in the chat box in a second so that people can have the access to that if they're interested. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that our community partners, the people that have gone through these trainings so far, have come back consistently and said to us, we want more of our folks, whether it's our board, our staff, our colleagues, to have access to this information. Please keep delivering the trainings. And so that's what we're doing. Really, at the end of the day, I'd say the vision is to increase the number of people who have access to this information, who ideally carry the value, so that the work of race equity continues to grow and there's more ownership of it, and it's not contingent on just a few organizations or even just 1 or 2 people within an organization to do it, but it's a combined effort of top-down and grassroots kind of coming together to say, this is something in our community that needs to change.
Thank you. Felicia, tell us about what this type of initiative requires in terms of time, effort, groundwork, relationships, and how you have used your role and position to inform this conversation.
In the most general sense, it requires us to first devote time and learning to really embody the value deep enough to speak intelligently on the issue. It really requires a lot of study and reading and just a lot of thinking about the issue to really internalize it. And then along with that, it requires a willingness to be uncomfortable, which people don't like. So that's a big thing to kind of have to get over. And then, so that's just sort of individually as leaders. But then, as you can imagine, inviting people to a 2-day training about race equity is not really like inviting someone to go, to lunch or on a cruise. Although nobody wants to go on a cruise these days. But for the most part, people are hesitant about that much time, and then the topic. We have a few people who are just chomping at the bit to do it, but a lot of people, it still takes some convincing. So to fill the classes, Ashley, Allison, and I have spent a lot of time in using relationships that we've developed professionally to invite, encourage, cajole, arm twist, bribe, whatever it's taken to get people there. And then we've been really intentional about the invitation lists. And I think somebody put in the chat box, who is it that's going to these trainings? The Waco Foundation was very intentional about the first group of people they invited to participate in that first training. And then we have been very deliberate with the invitations since then. We've started with community leaders. But even then, that's not even specific enough. Each training must be balanced by gender and by half people of color and half white people. So we spend a lot of time determining invitation lists and what individuals get invited and when. And so that irritates a lot of people because they say, I've been on the waiting list for a couple of years now. But it's really hard to get that perfect puzzle of gender and race in the room. And that is really important to the experience of the 2-day training. And then we just use our relationships to convince people to show up.
That's the hard part, right? To get them to participate.
Sometimes.
To wrap up, can each of you share one key takeaway you hope our audience will be able to use?
I'll start, Felicia, and then you can come behind me. For us, I'd say that this conversation and this work is not about assigning guilt or shame. For us, it really is about how do we figure out how to foster solutions that really provide everyone in our community equal access to a nice quality of life, an improved quality of life, an equitable quality of life. And so that's our focus.
I would absolutely ditto that. I think, our goal really ought to be a shared humanity, a world where we're all embraced for who we are and able to thrive, to reach our highest potential. And then recognizing inequitable systems that are not set up to support all people can be uncomfortable. And many of us, as I said, don't like to be uncomfortable, but sitting with that and investigating that discomfort is a really important step in achieving shared humanity and fixing those systems that were set up to benefit some of us and not everyone, I think is a big piece of that.
So we're gonna open up, I guess, the question and answer portion for those of you. If you can go on Zoom, if you can put your question on chat, we're monitoring that as well as Facebook Live. I think we have a team of folks trying to work through that. So if you can direct those questions that way. One of the questions from Zoom is, you've answered this, but let's just answer it directly. Is how many people in the Waco area have gone through this training? I believe you said about 240. Is that correct?
I'd say at least 240. The thing that we've done is that we've consistently tried to offer people access to both the 2-day training as well as the groundwater training so that they have the historical context as well as the present day context with a lot of the data. So we have people that are able to attend both. So that's why the numbers are where they are. I think if we were just to say groundwater, that number might be a little bit higher. But okay. We really try to make sure people have access to both of them. So I'd say at minimum, 240 people. Again, we had a session earlier this week. If you tap those on, probably another another 40 something people attended.
Okay. So basically we're seeing the community respond at least eagerly to that call of training at least.
And I'll just add, the response to the training really has been so positive. The people who attended, even the ones who didn't want to, for the most part, have just received it really well. And an interesting thing is a lot of people of color are like, I don't need to learn about racism. I'm real familiar with it. And but they come away with it with a very, very positive impression as well. So I think that's meant a lot.
And then, how do, in your opinion, how has this shaped the local community's attitude about racism? Or is that something hard to determine from the training? I don't want to, I'm just kind of going through these questions kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, I think you can see a lot of things changing. I mean, I think attitudes are hard to really measure unless you're specifically doing a survey about attitudes. But I think you can see the great work that's happening at the city, and they're talking about equitable economic development in a way that is different than in the past. Can't say that is because of these trainings specifically. I think that's the hard thing to measure in these trainings is we don't know exactly what comes from this, but you can see leadership changes across the community. I don't know. That's Nicole. You may have something to add.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the people who have attended have come away. Most of them have come away changed and are thinking about not only what do I need to think about differently, but what might my organization think about and what kind of conversations might we need to have there in terms of how race and racism is handled and whether or not there's a place for us to think about taking a race equity lens to our work.
So one of the questions from Facebook Live was, has there been an effort to shorten the times of trainings, such as the groundwater trainings, to achieve better participation? So I think you guys have referenced two different types of training. So I kind of want to clarify for those that are listening. There is a 2-day workshop. Obviously that would be the longer types of training, and the groundwater is really for those that are interested, that is to give the subject justice. I think that the 4-hour commitment is probably, is good for both sides. One, for the issue to be discussed, and the other for the participant to kind of get enough information to kind of sit with a little bit. Are there any objectives to shorten that training, to offer shorter presentations, maybe like an orientation or something?
Yeah. So one thing, just to clarify, the groundwater is actually only 3 hours.
Oh.
I know 3 hours still is a lot, but just to clarify that, yes. So there are a couple of things that we consistently do. I think we say we are always trying to figure out how do we increase the number of people in our community that have access to race equity education and training. The organization that we use for this, they have a very specific curriculum, and they are really good at it. And it's so well received and so good that they are nationally known around the country for this. So they kind of have their spiel in what they do, and so they don't really deviate from that. There have been times in the community, though, through Cooper Foundation's nonprofit network and other things, where we have brought in the topic of race equity training, and we've delivered content in that format to kind of continue to expose people to it. Because again, we recognize that our invitation lists are limited because of the capacity of what the trainers give us and tell us how many people can be in the room for those things. So we're looking at that, and we continue to look at that, but we don't really have the flexibility to adjust those trainings because that's the way this particular organization has decided to do their content. Felicia, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you did a great job.
So you had mentioned about being intentional in the invitations of those, for those groups, and you had also mentioned that some individuals experience, multiple sessions pass without them being invited to this list or invited to these workshops. How does one that's interested enroll, or at least show that interest to get on that list for waiting?
You can just email us and tell us you're interested in getting on the list.
Simple enough. Simple enough. And then another question, I guess we need to make sure that we provide your email addresses on our website as we conclude this this discussion later on this week or so. Is there something specific to Waco or the border area that makes this conversation easier, harder, and or more applicable? I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I'll interpret it the way I'll do my, I'll try. I mean, I think that Waco is like, I think in many ways we're not that different from anywhere else in the United States. And I think that when you look at the history of Waco and the history of Texas, and you look at redlining in the past, and I mean, that all happened here. And so but it doesn't make it any more applicable because that happened most places. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe Nicole, you can add something. Sorry.
I think you nailed it there. We have much of the same racial history as the rest of the nation. And so I don't think that we can say that we can exempt ourselves from having any of the repercussions that came from those things as well. Like Felicia said, with redlining, segregation in the schools, disinvestment in public schools, those kind of things. That happened in a lot of places, and it happened here. I think the only thing that I would say is that we've been fortunate, I think, in this community, in that there's a lot of people that are collaborative in nature and that are open to dialogue and open to conversation. And one of the things that we strive to do as foundations is to try to make sure that we meet people where they are. And so we don't come with judgment, we just kind of create a space for people to come where they are and kind of meet them in that conversation and understand that this is a journey. And so we try to give space to that journey. And I think that has helped as well to kind of try to create an atmosphere where people feel like they can have that conversation regardless. So.
Well, from our group and our audience today, I want to thank you all for taking time to answer, to first of all, talk about this subject and to bring to light some of the good work that's taken place across our community. And we encourage you, and we're encouraged by you and your work. So I just want to share that with you all as well. I'm going to ask Dr. Newman to give us a closing statement there.
And I just want to say thank you so much for having us. It really is nice to be able to talk about it.
I copy that one.
Thank you, Joel. And again, Nicole and Felicia, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you came and addressed our group and for everything else that you do in the community. I know you do a tremendous amount of work. And as someone who is originally from outside the community, we do have a significant history here, similar to the history in the rest of the country. But this is the place of Jesse Washington. This is where NAACP started because of the brutality of some of our history of racism. And so to know that that is part of this history, and that now we're at a place where I know that in large part because of the work that Nicole and Felicia do, and because of the type of community we live in, that many of the organizations in town are looking at their work through a race equity lens. I think that that is just an enormous amount of forward progress, and I'm incredibly proud to be here in Waco because of that. I attended the race equity training, and I, as other people of color, as a Latina, Chicana, was hesitant to go and not super interested because this obviously is something that I've dealt with in my entire life, and I didn't know what else that was going to add. And it was a 2-day training, but it was paradigm shifting for me. It was humongously important and valuable. I think because we do mostly see racism from a personal lens, and it's important to take a step back and understand that the largest percentage of us are people of good hearts and good faith who want to treat our neighbors kindly and with love, and that, but that there are huge inequities, and those are more structurally based. And until we take a step back and see the things that are causing inequities in income and health and childhood well-being and all the important things that make quality of life what it is, those changes are going to be hard to overcome. And so grateful for that training. I hope that 99% of the people in Waco could attend it. And so if you have any interest, it is definitely worthwhile. And like I said, since I've been here, in the 4 years that I've been here, it is all the time more and more evident how collaborative Wacoans are, how willing they are to make themselves a little bit uncomfortable, to move the conversation forward. And in most of my organizations, including here at Family Health Center, we're doing a lot of reevaluating procedures, policies, looking at things from a race equity lens. In several of the other boards that I sit on, we're doing the same thing. And so proud of Waco, so proud of these ladies and their organizations. And I hope that we continue this conversation. I think for Latinos, this has its own level of complexity. For each of us, it has its own level of complexity, and how we relate amongst ourselves and around other groups. There's just layers and layers of things for us to peel back and look at. This isn't a conversation we are finishing in an hour. This is just a preview of the things that we need to really start to unpack and address in order to have the world in the future that we want for our children and our neighbors. And so glad that all of you are here. And so on that vein, I wanted to remind you all that we are going to have another luncheon. Our next one is Friday, December 4th at 12 o'clock. I hope you can join us. In the meantime, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourselves. One of the fun things we do at these luncheons is get to know who else is in our community. And so as I call you, if you want to let me know your name, your title, and any entity which you may represent. I'm just going to start from the top with my participant list. And so the person I have is Karen Johnson. Karen? Okay. If Karen signs on later, feel free to jump in. Alfred Solano?
Thanks, Dr. Newman. Alfred Solano, I serve as the CEO and president of the Syntex Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I'm so grateful that we can be a part of this. And Felicia and Nicole, thank you for taking the time, and Joel, thanks for moderating.
Tom Gutierrez.
Hi, I'm Tom Gutierrez, pastor of Viento Fuerte Church. We are the Spanish ministry now of First Woodway, and working to do some outreach and reaching all different areas of the community, and in Hispanic, Afro-American, just making this more multicultural now, and looking to work with these different issues.
And well, Anthony, we've already met, but Anthony, if you want to tell us another word about you.
Well, I currently work for an organization out of Texas A&M University that is funded by the Kellogg Foundation. We do our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we have delivered international speeches, but more importantly, I work with the Hispanic Leadership Network and in this capacity. So, but thank you so much, Felicia Goodman and Nicole Wynter, for participating with us. We appreciate your time.
Bianca Tagle.
Hi, sorry, I'm having lunch while I'm doing Medicare sales in Killeen, so I'm out of town. I'm an insurance agent. Right now I do, I'm an agent with New York Life, doing all kinds of stuff, do home health and auto, all kinds of stuff. And I'm a board member in the chamber.
Carlos Perez. Carlos?
Hi, I'm with Waco Foundation. I am the Finance and Administration Coordinator, and I'm just listening in today. Thank you.
Elise Jones.
Hi, everyone. I'm a community organizer with Grassroots Community Development with a focus in South Waco. Thanks so much to the Hispanic Leaders Network for hosting this today, and to Felicia and Nicole for sharing.
Isabel Whedon.
Hi, Isabel Whedon, CPA with a local oil and gas consulting firm.
Israel.
Hi, this is Israel Ochameng. I'm the pastor for the Spanish congregation at First Baptist Waco and also the director for La Puerta Waco. I'm glad to be here.
Jessica Addis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Addis. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy at the Greater Waco Chamber. I lead our state and federal government affairs, and I'm just so grateful to Alfred for leading this initiative of the Hispanic Leadership Network and for opening this event to the community. We really want to be thoughtful about how we look at legislative and policy solutions around equity to ensure more equitable outcomes for all. So thanks for opening this up to everyone today and for being here.
Elaine.
So hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Bourdale. I am the CEO of the Victory Employer Services. I offer HR consultation and project work, but also another big part of my job is I'm the person in the background for the Hispanic Leaders Network, along with the advisory team. And thank you again, Felicia and Nicole. The information you provided today was absolutely wonderful and eye-opening. Again, I have participated in the groundwater sessions, and I was telling Felicia earlier that it may be a 3-hour session, but it goes by really quick because the information is just so valuable and so important to know. So thank you again for allowing us to bring this topic to you.
Pat Atkins.
Hi, my name's Pat Atkins. I'm a local attorney. I want to echo what others have said. Felicia, Nicole's presentation was outstanding. And for those of you on this call who've not had an opportunity to participate in the race equity training, again, I want to repeat what Elaine and Jessica have said, because it is truly a powerful experience. And so if you're given that opportunity, it is well worth the 2 days to go participate.
Casey Ashenfelter.
Hey everyone, my name is Casey Ashenfelter. I am part of the Baylor Collaborative on Hunger and Poverty, and there I get to support our nonprofit excellence project and coordinate the Leadership Plenty Institute in Waco.
Marlene Melendez.
I apologize. My name is Marlene Melendez. I am the Director of Financial Aid at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. We're a pretty new medical school in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And so I'm just trying to find better ways to navigate the system. I sit on several boards on the state. I sit on the Southern Area Health Education Center board. And so it's really just something, I've worked in education for 20 years, got my doctorate with a focus in social education or social justice. And so I think it's just, again, it's just learning better ways to help our students and our people sort of navigate the system and ensure that they have the tools that are available to them. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I will make sure that I take the training. So thank you.
Marlene, are you joining us from New Mexico?
I am, yes ma'am, from Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Wow, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited. I was born in El Paso, Texas. And so at the end of the day, right, it's near and dear to my heart. And I just, again, Waco is just one of those places that, you know, we have a lot of diversity and a lot of mix, but then, you know, you also have the hard side, and then you have the rural side, and then you have that influx coming in from the cities. So then you have those people with urban perspectives contributing to the community and the community growth. I think really this is a place to watch for the future, and how the nation's going to how the nation's going to look in the next 20 years. And I think Waco is probably on the forefront of that. So again, thank you very much for this invitation.
Pamela Ballantine.
Hi, I'm Pamela. I am the HHSC Foster Grandparent Program Volunteer Services Coordinator in this area. We recruit lower income senior citizens to be mentors for children in schools, daycares, juvenile justice centers. So hello, thank you very much. This was very informative today. Thank you, Nicole and Felicia.
Julia Cruz.
Hi, yes, I'm a recent transplant from Los Angeles, California, but I'm a representative of the National Campaign for Financial Literacy, educating people all about how money works and how to get that money working for you and stuff. So I'm just plugging in today to see what more I can learn from this community that's been such an incredible influence on my parents, and I look forward to seeing how I can help contribute as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Otsmar Villarruel.
Hello, good afternoon. I am a professor at NCC. I teach in chemistry since 2012 at NCC, so I'm currently part of a committee about diversity at NCC, so that's why I joined the meeting. I'm glad to join the meeting.
Gracias a usted, Osmar. Josh Caballero. I'll come back to you, Josh. Josh Blake.
Hello, I'm Josh Blake, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at Wilkerson Hatch Bailey, and I'm the new chairman of the Hispanic Chamber Board. I've got to say that I've enjoyed hearing where everyone's from and the diversity even in this meeting. It's pretty neat how Waco has diversified over the years. And anyway, so I'm excited to be chairman this year and look forward to the things that we'll accomplish. And I'm glad that we had this today, and look forward to sharing about it in the workshop with the rest of the board when we meet next Wednesday. So anyways, thank you all.
Josh Caballero, are you able to unmute?
His mic's not working, but he put something in the chat.
You put something in the okay. So Josh is community organizer with grassroots development. I know him and love him, and I'm so glad you're here, Josh. Thank you. John Montes.
How y'all doing? Nicole and Felicia, was a great presentation. Racism is a topic that we should all be familiar with, discuss freely, and attend all the racial training sessions that y'all have. It was a great presentation. Thank you for doing that today.
Leslie Gawa.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Lagawa, and I'm an organizer with Central Texas Interfaith. I'm among friends, Nicole and Felicia. Thank you so much for continuing the hard work of this conversation to make sure that it gets embedded in our community and in our discussions and eventually in our policies. So And thank you, Josh and Alfred and Elise for the invitation to the HLN. I'm so glad that it is here, and it's just been great to be with you guys. So yes, and I took it in 2016. It's not painless, but it is important and meaningful. So if you are invited, take that invitation. It's one you do not want to decline. Thank you.
Millette Harrison.
Hi, yeah, Millette Harrison with the City of Waco. I am the director of our newly formed Office of Neighborhood Engagement. So I'll be working with a lot of the neighborhood associations all over town and working through whatever issues they may have, predominantly working on city things, but also working with like Josh and Elise from Grassroots and others on all the different perspectives the neighborhoods have. And I would just like to definitely endorse the training. I've had the benefit, the luxury of being both at the groundwater training and also the 2-day REI. I believe earlier you said paradigm shifting, and I really couldn't agree more. So I wholeheartedly endorse the group, and I appreciate being a part of this. I appreciate being the invitation being extended, and I'm glad that the work is continuing, however it has to, virtually or otherwise right now, to continue the conversations in our community.
I think I've touched on everyone. If I'm missing someone or someone wants to say and have an extra word, we have a few more minutes. Elaine, have I missed anybody?
Myself as the co-chair with Elaine, but my paying job, I'm the director of community relations for Rappaport Academy Public School.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay, have we covered everyone? All right, well, then again, thank you for everybody for being here. Hispanic Leaders Network is one of the things that's very near and dear to my heart. It started pretty small a couple years back and has just really pushed the boundaries of what we can do in the community in terms of coming together and having important conversations. And a lot of it is due to the enormous effort of Alfred and Elaine and Bridget. And so thank you all, and Joel, everybody else, Josh, on the board. Thank you again, Felicia and Nicole. And thank you everyone for being here. Please join us again on December 4th.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you all.